Over the last several months, a topic I've seen being discussed a lot is Pokemon Sword and Shield. There's several reasons why I play Pokemon games myself, and one of them is to collect all Pokemon, or at least as close to as possible as I can. Since Sword and Shield doesn't contain a full Pokédex, that's not possible, but I still want to try the game anyway. Because, well, collecting isn't the only reason I play Pokemon games. Now that I've got several hours under my belt, I'll tell you what I think of Sword and Shield. There's new game modes, improved graphics, new Pokemon, a new region, changes to how online play works, and much more. As a kid in the 90s, the thing we always talked about was a 3D Pokemon game. Let's Go Eevee and Let's Go Pikachu gave us a taste of what that could be like, but it still feels 2D in gameplay. The new core game feels like a step farther into the 3D realm. It's not a totally 100% sandbox type of deal, but there are moments of freedom and situations where you can move the camera around. You still have the routes that connect all the towns together, and I'm happy to report that unlike Gen 7 games, you don't have to travel an intestinal path just to reach the other side of a fence. I haven't noticed any of these needlessly artificially winding paths here, thankfully. Sword and Shield is still linear, which is fine. That way it's always clear where you're going, and if you ever forget where you're supposed to go, the pause menu will remind you what to do. I'm not really into the finer aspects of Pokemon battle, but to me they always feel like they always do. I still think they're a bit too slow. I don't like how sometimes with status effects, for example, the game has to cycle through all the animations and take time to move the camera around back and forth and all that stuff. I say simplify it and make it a bit more fast-paced. But that's not a complaint I have that's unique to Gen 8. I'm just saying. The region we find ourselves in is called the Galar region, which is based on the UK. I really like the look and feel of it. It's got its own distinctive vibe. Due to the graphical improvements over previous games, Sword and Shield features a lot of Pokemon just hanging out in the overworld, which I really like. In the old games, you wouldn't see them outside of battle really, which is why I like all the past games where your Pokemon follows you around. That's not the case in Sword and Shield, but in a way you don't need to, because you can see them out and about in the world. But let's back up for now and we'll start the game in the beginning so you can get an idea of how the game opens up once you start getting into it. After choosing your preferred language, you can select your gender and skin color. The appearance of your character is very customizable as expected. There's a video that introduces you to the world of Pokemon as well as the region. The game shows off its 3D-ness to the player with various cutscenes, and it certainly looks better than ever. Your rival, or at least one of them, is someone called Hop. He's the younger brother of Leon, the current champion. That's not a spoiler since the game tells you that right away. I personally find Hop very annoying. It's like, buddy, calm down. Maybe as the story unfolds, I'll like him more. Pokemon has always been a story of change, self-improvement, and growth after all. You do your usual tutorial stuff and also pick your starter Pokemon. Eventually, Leon endorses the player character in Hop in order to get them to be allowed to participate in the Pokemon League. You then travel from gym to gym and try to get all the badges. So far, things seem quite familiar. One of the biggest changes is that wild Pokemon now visibly roam the overworld, like in the Let's Go games. Coming into contact with them initiates a battle where you can either defeat or capture them. I find it interesting how Pokemon are more true to their actual size now. So that little squirrely thing is often obscured in the grass, while larger ones are, well, let's just say some of them will be quite easy to spot. Some Pokemon are skittish, so you have to sneak in order to get to them. Running or riding a bike will send them running the other direction. The opposite is true with more aggressive ones, which will chase you. I like that. It makes it feel like you're actually dealing with creatures that are different to one another. They move differently as well. For example, Zigzagoons wiggle all over the place, and it's really easy to accidentally bump into them in certain areas if you're riding a bike. Speaking of Pokemon, I think the new Gen 8 Pokemon are pretty cool. There's a lot of variety in types and appearance. It's fun discovering them as you play. There's a decent amount of previous Pokemon returning too. No, of course you don't get all of them as we know, but if you don't focus on that aspect of the game, it's like any other Pokemon game where certain regions have their own native species and all that. Also, certain ones have a Galar region variation, which is interesting. That's something I liked from Gen 7 games. Gyms have the traditional challenges and puzzles you do before you fight the gym leader. None of that annoying island trial stuff. One thing that's quite interesting is that you need to wear league jerseys when competing in official league matches. The whole league has this football aesthetic. When I say football, I mean football, not American football. The background music includes chanting and your jersey looks like a team kit. I kind of like that it's mandatory because it makes the entire thing feel like an official event. And that's also what I didn't like about the island trial. It didn't seem like a big deal. Whereas this, it feels like a big deal, and it makes things more exciting for me. Also, EA, you need to take a look at the crowd animations. Do you see how they don't reuse the same animation for two people standing right next to each other? Why is FIFA still so clumsy with that? Anyway, let's talk about other gameplay thingies. Most of the time, you won't be able to control the camera. It swings around doing its thing around towns and on routes. That's fine with me, I don't really mind, but there are occasions, like with Sun and Moon, where I think the camera angle is too shallow. It's hard to see what's going on, especially if you're going towards the camera. I don't need the camera all up in my character's face. I just want to see where I'm going. So far, the only place I've found where you can tell the camera who's boss is in Hyrule Field. The wild area. It's got a familiar look, doesn't it? It's an open area with lots of Pokemon running around. These are all high-level Pokemon, but I guess that really depends what level you're at. But when you first reach the field, there's going to be Pokemon that are way stronger than you are. The good thing is that means you can, go back and re-explore the area. Plus, there's other stuff we want to talk about in the field here when it comes to multiplayer. One of the things you'll see also are these red glowing things all over the place. Those are Pokemon dens that may have Dynamax Pokemon in them. Dynamax is this game's evolution gimmick, where Pokemon can transform for a limited amount of turns before going back to normal. As you can see, they're pretty gigantic. If you interact with a den and there's a Pokemon in there, it goes into another type of battle. 4 players versus the giant Pokemon of Doom. It's like a boss fight complete with health bar on the top of the screen. You can invite friends and other people to join you, or alternatively, NPC characters can take their place. You also collect watts when interacting with a den, and you can spend watts on items when speaking to a watt trader. Like with Gen 7 games, you don't need to bother with HMs. Stuff like Fly and Surf are all dealt with in a convenient way. I was sick and tired of HM slaves in the older games, so I'm glad they went this route. Same thing with experience sharing. Just having that be an automatic thing removes a lot of hassle. Pitching a tent might be something a lot of you do all the time, but it's the first time that it's a game mode in a Pokemon game. You can set up camp when you're out and about. There you can interact and play with your current party of Pokemon, which is kind of fun. You can also make curry using ingredients and berries. There's a mini game where you fan the flames and stir the pot. You can use motion controls if you want, and there's a quick time event at the end that I always manage to screw up for some reason. So basically it's like Senran Kagura Reflections, but with curry. Depending on how rare the berries you're using are, the more benefits your Pokemon get, like regeneration of health, regeneration of PP, increase of happiness, and so on and so forth. There's even a curry dex, which is pretty funny. Camping is an entirely optional thing, but it's kind of fun and cute. Plus, it can be of benefit if you're like me and forget to buy potions, and are also too lazy to head back to a Pokemon Center and then return to where you left off. Online works a little differently now, though the basics still remain. There's the usual local and online modes. You can see what other people are up to, and inversely, some of your actions are broadcasted to other people as well. You can do link battles to, battle. There's no GTS or anything like that at the moment, so you can't search for specific Pokemon to trade. You can do link trades, same as, with every other Pokemon game. Wonder Trade is back, but with a different name. It's called Surprise Trade, and instead of needing to wait for someone to do the same, you can just close the online menu and do your thing until the trade happens. Supposedly, Surprise Trade works locally too. Being online gives you other gameplay additions. Not only can you find other players' camps and interact with their Pokemon, Hyrule Field will be populated from players all over the world, running around doing their thing. Normally, it's not this stuttery, but when I was recording this footage, it was for some reason. You can go up to people and they'll give you something. I'm guessing people don't know that you're interacting with them, since nobody ever went up to me. I don't even know if this is real-time, movement that we're seeing here. Whatever the case, it still gives you that feeling that other people are around you. Yes, you need Switch Online, by the way, for that stuff to work. Let's talk about graphics a little bit. I think they look great for the most part. It's an improvement over Gen 7 for sure. There's some things that look a bit odd, like textures in the background repeating themselves, but why let that bother you? There's also instances where you're just running around and Pokemon and people and other characters just suddenly pop up. I guess that's a hardware limitation, but hey. There's some slowdowns that'll happen, like when you start a battle, but it's not that bad. The game usually stays at 30 frames per second. I really like how the lighting is more sophisticated. There's clouds blocking the sunlight on occasion, orange sunsets and other atmospheric things like that. Early on in the game, when you walk into the foggy woods and see the legendary Pokemon, is quite good looking too. I can't quite remember if this was the case in the older games too, but I like how characters run differently whether they're going up or down the stairs or a hill. Speaking of running, the animations are not stiff and unnatural like in Sun and Moon. I like how their legs conform to non-level terrain now too. Characters are also more expressive, there's less smiling and looking into dead space going on. Pokemon does have a very unique art style, and we're now at a point where the in-game graphics match the art style of the illustrations. I've got no complaints about the sounds. A lot of them will sound familiar or even identical to past games. I like Sword and Shield's rendition of many of the franchise's more well-known songs. Another song I like is the one that plays when you're battling the gym leader. It's really energetic, and when the leader's last Pokemon comes out, it changes, and people in the stadium start chanting the melody. The region-inspired music is a highlight too. One of the things that has steadily improved with every new release is character customization. At first you could only play as a boy, now you can not only pick your gender but also skin color, what the character wears, and even hairstyles. I think that's great. Pokemon is one of those games where a lot of people want to play as themselves. So that way it's easier for them to do that. In turn, those who prefer to make up a character like me can do that too. I find it a lot of fun reaching a new town and then just seeing what's available in the shops. I've so far only completed the first 3 gyms, so there's a lot for me to discover yet. I'm curious to see how the post-game is going to be. After I'm done finishing the main story is usually when I really start getting into stuff like completing the Pokédex. I'm not sure if I'll end up being disappointed by the lack of a complete Pokédex, but at the very least I can say that I've enjoyed the other aspects of the game very much. The world of Pokemon is something I always like to immerse myself in, so as long as the game gives me something to do, I'm sure I'm going to continue enjoying myself. So yeah, I think I'm going to buy Pokemon Shield. That's right, I don't own this game. I borrowed it from my library because I wasn't sure if I would enjoy the game. There were like 8 people ahead of me who reserved the game also, and that was before it came out even. I'm glad I was able to play it over the holidays. It was a lot of fun for me, and it gave me that classic Pokemon adventure feel that I remember experiencing when I first played Silver back in the day. Most of the things I didn't like about Gen 7 are changed or have been implemented in a way that I prefer. I hope you found the information helpful. Let me know what you think of Pokemon Sword and Shield. If there are details that I haven't mentioned that you feel are important, please post them in the comments below. Thank you to all the Patreon supporters who help out the channel. Because of your support, I can now finally upgrade some components on my computer, which should make Adobe Premiere Pro life a bit easier, I hope. You can also help out by becoming a Patreon supporter or buying a sticker, mug, shirt, or hoodie from the merch store. Links to all those things are in the description. But of course, you don't need to do that. Even just watching is a really great thing. So with that said, thank you for watching, and I'll see you again in the next video.